Theft is virtue. Stealing is altruism. Murder might be excusable. Burn it all down. These are the principles of the radical left. And that radical left is increasingly embraced by the mainstream Democratic Party.
So Ben Shapiro just exposed how radical leftist Hassan Piker has completely captured the Democratic Party mainstream while living like a capitalist millionaire. We're seeing the rise of third worldist ideology that justifies theft, violence, and terrorism. This isn't fringe anymore. It's democratic orthodoxy.
So you may have heard of Hassan Piker. There are about 1,000 New York Times profiles of this guy. He's associated with pretty much all the major left-wing Democrats. He's a podcaster, of course. He's a Twitch streamer. He's also monstrously evil. He advocates publicly in favor of hatred of America. There's not a terrorist group, an anti-American, anti-Israel terrorist group he doesn't support. He has advocated for violence against his opponents, and the mainstream left loves him.
The New York Times legitimizing Piker shows how far the Overton window has shifted. When mainstream media platforms someone who openly supports Hamas and justifies violence, that's institutional capture. Democrats from Omar to Tlaib regularly appear on his show, making extremism respectable.
Also, he zaps his dog. Also, he's a socialist who is really, really, really rich. So again, hypocrisy does not matter to these folks, not one iota. When you speak of limousine liberals, this dude is a mansion Marxist. He is not a limousine liberal. He's a mansion Marxist. How much money is he? I mean, he's worth millions and millions of dollars is the answer to that particular question.
This perfectly illustrates elite leftist hypocrisy. Piker preaches revolution from his $3 million mansion, while actual working-class Americans struggle with inflation. It's Marie Antoinette socialism. Let them eat Marxism while I live in luxury.
According to the Washington Post, there was a massive Twitch hack some years ago in 2021, and it found that since 2019, between 2019 and 2021, he'd been paid almost $3 million from his streaming on Twitch. And of course, he has a really terrific mansion in Los Angeles. He purchased it in 2021 for a little under $3 million, apparently. I mean, look, that's a nice place. That is a nice place. Apparently, it's about 3,800 square feet in Brentwood, I believe. Somewhere in the nicer area of LA.
$3 million in streaming revenue alone, plus a Brentwood mansion. That's more wealth than 99% of Americans will ever see. Yet he advocates destroying the very capitalist system that made him rich. Pure parasitic hypocrisy.
And of course, he is also willing to travel to Cuba, a communist hellhole, where the average annual income is something like $150. He's happy to travel there to party it up and explain why he should have air conditioning in his nice 5-star hotel, but everyone else is just enjoying the weather outside, having a great time. His outfits that he was wearing around over there, well, it turns out that they were costing maybe 4 times the annual income of a normal Cuban. $690 shirt from a brand called Glass Cypress. Hideous shirt, by the way. Really, truly ugly. And also, in that same image, he is wearing a ring from Cartier that costs $1,480. And he is also wearing Cartier sunglasses that cost $1,300. Remember, folks, he is a good Marxist.
Wearing $1,600 in accessories while tourists in communist Cuba, where people literally starve, is grotesque. It's like flaunting Rolex watches at a homeless shelter while praising poverty. The moral blindness is staggering.
That America is evil, that private property is inherently bad, that violence is often justified, and as a sort of self-defense mechanism so he can do whatever the hell he wants, no principles of morality must be adhered to as long as you're fighting the system. It turns out that not only do the ends of Marxist anarchism justify the means, they justify literally any behavior so long as you are aligned with the ends. So you can have a really nice mansion, you can wear a $1,400 Cartier ring and $1,300 Cartier sunglasses in Cuba with all of the poors, so long as you say that you are in favor of communism. Now, here's the thing. What we are watching right now on the left, the rise of this radical leftist nonsense. And again, he is not unique.
This is moral relativism taken to its logical extreme. When your ideology becomes your identity, any behavior is justifiable as long as you mouth the right slogans. Wealth, luxury, hypocrisy, all forgiven if you hate America loudly enough.
When people on the right say woke is dead, woke may have died, but it's been replaced by something else. And that is something older. Third worldism. Third worldism is the philosophy that basically every country on earth that is poor because of the West, that the solution to that is to tear down the West from the inside, that global redistributionism, destruction of private property, and violence are all justified by the evils of the Western system.
Third worldism is essentially anti-Western colonialism rebranded for American consumption. It's not about helping poor countries. It's about tearing down Western civilization from within. Every institution, every tradition becomes illegitimate and deserves destruction.
So back in the 1970s, there's something called the Baader-Meinhof gang. They were also called the Red Army faction. They were communists. And their whole goal was to tear down the world of capitalism on behalf of Marxism. And they routinely quoted people like Herbert Marcuse and Antonio Gramsci. They called for revolution. Ulrike Meinhof, who was a left-wing radical journalist who founded the group, famously said, quote, "Protest is when I say this does not please me. Resistance is when I ensure that what does not please me occurs no more." And resistance, of course, is good. Right? Protest isn't enough. You need resistance. Well, that manifested itself in actual violence, like actual terrorism by the Baader-Meinhof group. Again, they were Marxist in orientation. They'd been influenced by radical race riots in the United States by, for example, the Black Panthers. In the United States, they were allied with terrorist groups and radicals all over the globe. Ulrike Meinhof actually wrote an essay defending the Munich massacre of Israeli Olympians by Palestinian terrorists. Does this sound familiar? All these same people defending Hamas's massacre of Jews on October 7th, defending Hezbollah, which, of course, he has done, Hassan Piker.
The Baader-Meinhof connection is crucial. They justified terrorism through the same moral framework. Western capitalism is violence, therefore violence against it is self-defense. Hamas apologism follows identical logic. Same playbook, different decade.
He explained that he fully endorses cool crimes like robbing banks and stealing artifacts. That's cool. The crime is cool. Here is this truly despicable piece of shit.
Would you steal from the Louvre?
Yes.
I would not be logistically capable of executing such a fact, but would I cheer on every news story of people that I see doing it? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's cool. We gotta get back to cool crimes like that. Like, bank robberies, right? Stealing priceless artifacts, things of that nature. I feel like that's way cooler than the 7,000th new cryptocurrency scheme that people are engaging in.
What a despicable human being. He also went on to suggest that you should steal from corporations. In fact, your stealing is factored into their bottom line. They have a breakage policy, so you should just be the breakage policy, says Hassan Piker. I mean, when you actively advocate for violations of basic 10 Commandments type stuff, like thou shalt not steal, no, you should steal because truly the corporations are stealing from you. You should do violence because they're doing social violence to you. Here was Hassan Piker saying he is pro-stealing.
This isn't theoretical. He's directly encouraging criminal behavior to millions of young followers. When influencers with massive platforms tell kids that stealing is virtuous, that creates real-world crime waves. Words have consequences.
That's what he is doing. He's not in favor of murder, you see, but he totally understands why United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was murdered. Like he wouldn't himself be in favor of murder because that's even beyond stealing. Like one of the 10 Commandments, like okay, but like two, I don't know. Okay, but also, wasn't the real murderer Brian Thompson? Wasn't he the real murderer? Says Hassan Piker.
Engels wrote about the concept of social murder. And Brian Thompson, as the United Healthcare CEO, was engaging in a tremendous amount of social murder, the systematized forms of violence, the structural violence of poverty, the for-profit paywalled system of healthcare in this country. And the consequences of that are tremendous amounts of pain, tremendous amounts of violence, tremendous amounts of deaths. And that was a fascinating story for me because Americans are very draconian. about crime and punishment. They're very black and white on this issue. And yet, because of the pervasive pain that the private healthcare system had created for the average American, I saw so many people immediately understand why this death had taken place.
Creating permission structures for murder is exactly how political violence escalates. First, you dehumanize the targets. CEOs are murderers. Then justify violence against murderers. It's textbook radicalization leading to terrorism.
That's the one they're mainstreaming. And by the way, his ideology is already mainstream. It is. I mean, here he is with his ideological buddy, his ideological twin, Zohran Mamdani, on his show. And then, of course, he's been on with other ideological friends like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Again, these are all of his friends. These are, and by the way, Zohran Mamdani is the same ideologically as Hassan Piker. They are exactly the same. Nothing Hassan Piker says is radically different from anything Zohran Mamdani says. And Zohran Mamdani is now the mayor of New York. Here is Zohran Mamdani, and you might notice his language is pretty reminiscent, actually, of Hassan Piker's language.
Yusef Salaam becoming Manhattan Borough president shows this ideology now controls actual government positions. When former extremist activists hold power, their radical networks get legitimized and mainstreamed through official channels.
This is a picture of the former president of the United States and the so-called ideological thought leader of the Democratic Party sitting with Zohran Mamdani. This is all fully mainstreamed in the Democratic Party. There are some jazz hands, the jazz hands of theft and excuse making for terrorism and murder. Really, really strong stuff here from the Democratic Party.
Obama legitimizing these figures gives them credibility they could never achieve alone. When former presidents associate with radical ideologues, it signals to moderate Democrats that extremism is acceptable, even fashionable.
Hassan Piker's philosophy is the mainstream philosophy, increasingly, of the Democratic Party. How does this infiltration take place? Well, the truth is that it really starts with fake empathy. So Rob Henderson has a really good piece over at the Wall Street Journal. Obviously, he works also with our friends over at Manhattan Institute. And he points out that there's a newly published paper by Samuel Pratt at UCLA. They built what they called a words can harm scale, which was a survey asking people how much they agree with statements like, I could be left emotionally scarred by something I read. And the first finding from this study was that belief is stable, meaning that people who believed it 2 weeks ago still believe it today, that I could be left emotionally scarred by something I read. Who holds that view? People who are higher in the belief that words can harm tend to be young, female, non-white, politically liberal. They rated themselves as higher in intellectual humility, empathy, moral grandstanding, and the belief in the importance of silencing others.
This research explains why college campuses became authoritarian echo chambers. Students claiming words cause trauma aren't seeking protection. They're weaponizing victimhood to control others. Fake empathy becomes real tyranny.
If you have an intransigent minority of people who refuse to abide by the rules, they can get everybody else to abide by their rules. So he gives the example of, let's say you have a family of 4. And you have like 2 parents, a son, and a daughter. And the daughter only eats organic. So when it comes time to make dinner, mom now has a choice. She can either cook 2 meals, one for the non-organic family members and one for her daughter, or she can cook 1 meal with only organic ingredients. So it's easier, it's less fuss, you just cook 1 meal. So that's renormalization of the family unit. Now everybody is doing what the daughter, who's only 25% of the family, wants to do. And then you can extend that out. Now the family, which only eats organic now, they decide to go to a barbecue attended by 3 other families, and now the host has to make the same choice that mom did. And the host does the same thing. You know, we don't want to offend this family. It's just easier to renormalize toward organic food. The renormalization, creating a new normal, gets broader and broader just because there was one intransigent person in the beginning.
Renormalization theory explains how fringe becomes mainstream without majority support. One intransigent radical forces everyone else to accommodate them rather than create conflict. Soon, the exception becomes the rule.
Meaning Hassan Piker is a crazy radical, but he's not the actual threat to the country. The threat to the country is all of the people who will side with him. That's the actual threat. There's a physicist named Serge Galam. He has posited that in some cases, it takes about 20% of a population to support an extreme view in order to cause radical renormalization. And there is an easy way to do it. He says that what you do is you activate what he calls frozen prejudices at the risk of appearing intolerant or immoderate to a broad majority while still maintaining a solid core base. So what you do is you start with a motivated core group. You don't worry about alienating people. And then you appeal to the prejudices of vulnerable groups and they join you. You make the choice binary. So what you do is you say, the system sucks. It's terrible. I will never travel with the system. Stealing is good. Violence is fine. Terrorism, all good. And I'm never moving from that position. And then you go to, say, a supposedly marginalized group and you say, hey, you can either side with me, the person rebelling against the system, or you can side with the system that is victimizing you. That's the binary choice. And it turns out a bunch of pseudo-moderates will join on, intimidated by you. They'll say, well, yeah, sure, he believes some crazy things, but we're on the same page on the bigger thing. Right? Sure, they believe some crazy about Hezbollah, and sure, they're kind of justifying murder, but on the really important thing, like whether the healthcare system is failing us, he's right. He's just too passionate, but he's right. And that's how you take over an entire party.
This strategy has already captured academia, media, and major democratic institutions. Moderate Democrats enable extremism by refusing to draw lines, thinking they can control radicals they've empowered. History shows that never works.